Labor Day weekend. My own stepdaughter Rachel looked me square in the eyes and said, "You're not the man Dad was. You're just a confused old liability." By Christmas, I had lost everything. The deed to my Hamptons estate gone. The papers filed and signed without my knowledge. My Fidelity portfolio, $14 million built over 4 decades, had been drained. Not in one dramatic swipe, but in slow, calculated transactions. Withdrawals, disguised as estate optimization. Legal. On paper, but not moral. Even my medical decisions, things as intimate as what prescriptions I could take, were no longer mine to make. I found out when my doctor's office called, confused about a change in guardianship. That was the moment I knew I wasn't just being watched. I was being replaced. I'm Dr. Samuel Rourke, 72 years old, retired neurosurgeon. For over 40 years, I operated on spines and necks that others wouldn't touch. I taught at Harvard. I trained teams from Tokyo to London. I wasn't flashy, but I was exact. I never missed a mortgage payment. I never forgot a tax filing. I sent tuition checks to underprivileged students and never once let a malpractice case hit my desk. I did everything right. When I retired, I thought I'd done enough to secure peace. I moved out of the city, simplified my finances, organized everything into neat folders, digital and physical. I had legal directives, medical proxies, trusts, an estate plan. I thought I was prepared. But there's one thing I didn't account for: greed that wears a familiar face. They assumed that age softened my awareness. That grief made me dull. That retirement meant surrender. They mistook quiet for weakness. But here's the truth. When you've spent your life making incisions 1 millimeter from paralysis, you don't lose your edge. You sharpen it. And if you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted, someone who shared your dinner table, drop your city in the comments. Because you're not alone. Subscribe for the twist. Because what they did to me wasn't just betrayal. It was a blueprint. And they never expected me to rewrite it. As you follow this story, remember 3 things. First, a forged power of attorney document that bore my signature, but not my consent. Second, a dusty red envelope I kept in a locked drawer, untouched since Catherine's funeral. And third, a tiny flash drive from the Ring camera above my back patio that caught more than just garden raccoons. This wasn't just elder abuse. This was coordinated, premeditated theft. And it started long before the first dollar went missing. Looking back, it didn't start with the missing money. It started with the missing space. The day Catherine died, a piece of the house went quiet. 43 years of marriage. We built our life from routine Sunday jazz. Her herb garden in the back. Roast chicken every Wednesday. When she passed, it wasn't just the end of love. It was the start of an open wound. I sold the brownstone in Boston, donated half the furniture, kept only what mattered: photo albums, her journals, a ceramic bird she made in college that still sat on the kitchen window. Then I moved to the Hamptons. I wasn't looking for company. I was looking for silence. Long walks, a slower pace, maybe a few guest lectures at Harvard Medical. I didn't want to be needed. I just wanted to feel useful. That's when Rachel reappeared. She was Catherine's daughter from a previous marriage. We never had a strong bond. But I'd tried. Paid for her grad school. Gave her the down payment for her first home. When Catherine was alive, Rachel called on birthdays and holidays. After the funeral, she came by more often. At first, I thought it was kindness. She'd drop off groceries, ask if I'd eaten, sit through the occasional rerun of Mass H. But within a few weeks, the visits turned into overnights. The overnights turned into her bringing boxes. One Sunday, she stood in the living room and said, "This house feels so empty. Maybe I could stay a while. Help manage things." I said yes. Not because I needed help, but because After 6 months of silent mornings, I missed the sound of footsteps in the hallway. The first week, she moved my medications into one of those plastic organizers. Simpler this way, she said. The second week, the Wi-Fi password changed. She claimed she was tightening security. By week 3, her boyfriend Brandon had set up a podcast studio in my garage. When I asked why, he smiled and said, "Just building a little side hustle." They kept using that word little, like every change was harmless, like I was overreacting. I told myself they were grieving too, that they needed stability, that I was being cynical. Meanwhile, I was still managing my obligations. I chaired a medical ethics board, oversaw 2 charitable foundations, reviewed research proposals for a university in Toronto. He still had purpose, but my back was giving out, and physical therapy was cutting into my mornings. I wasn't moving as fast, and Rachel noticed. She saw the Florida vacation home on my calendar, the statements from Fidelity, the yacht docked in Rhode Island quietly accruing maintenance bills I barely looked at. She also noticed I had started sleeping in, missing lectures, forgetting to reorder my insulin until the bottle was almost empty. She never said it out loud, but the shift was subtle, like someone taking your coat while you're still wearing it. Then the Tesla showed up in the driveway. Shiny, black, leased under the family trust. I didn't recognize the signature. Supplements I'd never ordered arrived weekly in branded boxes, brain boosters, energy pills, proprietary blends with suspicious labels. When I asked, Rachel smiled. "Just looking out for your health." "Sam, you've been so forgetful lately." Brandon started talking over me at dinner. Rachel stopped asking my opinion. Every conversation turned into a presentation. Here's what we've done. Here's what we're changing. Here's what we've decided. I wasn't being consulted. I was being handled. Then one morning, I heard them laughing in the kitchen. My name came up. I paused by the hallway door. Rachel's voice. "The best part is, he still thinks he's calling the shots." Brandon replied, "Let him. The longer he thinks that, the easier this all goes through." I didn't say a word, just turned around, walked outside, and stood barefoot in the garden Catherine once loved. The soil was dry. The rosemary bush she planted was half dead. Something had shifted. They weren't helping me. They were rehearsing their takeover. And the part that broke me wasn't what they were planning. It was how easily I let them in. It started with a ping, a quiet, almost forgettable notification on my phone. Just after breakfast, I was pouring coffee, half listening to one of Brandon's startup calls echoing from the garage when I saw it. Fidelity alert account activity, $86,000. Withdrawn. I stared at the screen. There had to be a mistake. I hadn't authorized a single transaction since early spring. And even then, it was a donation to a spinal cord research fund. I called the number in the alert. A woman answered, cheerful and efficient. "Dr. Rourke." "Yes, this transfer was processed yesterday. It was approved under your power of attorney." I froze. My voice cracked. "Excuse me, my power of attorney." "Yes." "See ya," she said, like it was routine. "The one filed back in April. We have it notarized and on record. Do you need a copy sent over?" I told her yes and gave her my private email. 10 minutes later, I opened the PDF, and that's when the world tilted. The document was clean, formal, headers aligned, legal language tucked into all the right places. My signature sat at the bottom, next to Rachel's. But it wasn't mine. Not really. It was a version of my signature from years ago, back when Catherine handled our tax filings. The notary stamp was from a firm I hadn't worked with in over a decade. And the stationery, my old personal letterhead. One I stopped using in 2014. Someone had reached backward. dug up pieces of my past and stitched them together to create something new, something powerful. I didn't panic. I printed it, slid it into the dusty red envelope I kept locked in my office drawer. Then I opened the browser and ordered a Ring camera for the back patio. Overnight shipping. No signature required. That night, he smiled at dinner, complimented Rachel's risotto, even let Brandon show me his new crypto dashboard. But I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat in the den, replaying every moment that suddenly looked different under this new light. The Tesla, the supplements, the missing checks from the foundation account, the fact that Rachel had started taking my calls at the front desk when I visited the doctor, all of it clicked into place. And then came the audio. 3 days after I set up the Ring cam, I caught them on the back porch. Rachel's voice was sharp, precise, like she'd rehearsed this monologue a dozen times. "If we get him to skip just one more neurology appointment," she said, "we can finalize the guardianship request. The medical file already shows memory decline." "Brandon, we're this close," he responded casually. "Once it's official, we move. Sell the Florida place. Cash out the bonds. I already talked to a guy who wants the yacht." I sat there in the dark, hands shaking, replaying the words. Not because I didn't believe them, but because part of me still hoped I'd heard wrong. But I hadn't. They weren't just mismanaging my money. They were erasing me. I saved the clip, backed it up, uploaded it to 3 separate encrypted folders. Then I called the one person who had trained me to trust precision above instinct, Felix Moore. We had done our residency together in the 70s. He'd gone on to lead a neuro lab in Chicago. Now retired, but still sharp, still respected. Still, someone who knew the difference between a forgetful old man and a man under attack. He flew in 2 days later. We sat in my study. I told him everything. Showed him the fake POA, the recording, the changes in the house. Felix didn't flinch. "Sam," he said, "you need a fresh cognitive evaluation. Done on record. With time-stamped EEG. Memory series. All of it. I'll do it myself." And he did. 3 hours of testing. 2 days of lab review. His verdict: "Your brain function is clean. Crystal clear. Better than some 50-year-olds I've tested. There's no decline." They're building a case on fiction. It wasn't just a relief. It was ammunition. Now I had proof my mind was intact. My instincts weren't paranoia. And this wasn't about helping an aging man manage his affairs. This was theft. Systematic. Coordinated. And months in the making. And Rachel. She wasn't just complicit. She was leading it. What I didn't know yet was how many people had signed on. But I'd find out soon, because the next breadcrumb wasn't digital. It came in the mail. And it changed everything. 2 days after Felix gave me the results, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email. Not a phone call. A physical letter. It came in one of those thick white government envelopes. The kind with perforated edges and official ink that bleeds slightly when touched. I sliced it open with my thumb, not expecting much. Inside was a Medicare notification. Denied. Claim ineligible under long-term incapacitation status. I read it twice. Incapacitation. I hadn't missed a single annual physical in over 10 years. I passed a cognitive evaluation just 48 hours earlier. My vitals were stable. My records clean. Yet here it was in print. A federal record that said I was no longer capable of managing my own care, which meant someone had filed something behind my back. Someone had submitted forms, updated medical files, changed classifications. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was fraud. I picked up the phone and called my physician's office. I asked to speak to Karen, the nurse who had managed my chart for years. Her voice was hesitant. "Dr. Rourke," We were told not to contact you directly anymore. Rachel said all updates should go through her now. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just asked for one thing: a copy of my medical file. When it arrived, my hands trembled, turning the pages. Someone had inserted 2 psychiatric evaluations, both unsigned, both vaguely worded. They referenced things I never said, including a supposed hallucination from April. I never hallucinated. I never even had a bad dream. But the real punch came in the listed guardian of record. Rachel, official. Filed. Notarized. That forged power of attorney was just the start. Now they were using my name, my records, my legal identity to erase me from my own life. And when I checked the notary on the POA, it was Daniel Wexler, an estate planner, someone I used to play golf with every summer until Catherine died. I hadn't spoken to him in over 5 years, but Rachel had. I dug into emails, old call logs, scanned calendars. Wexler had visited the house twice in the last 6 months. Once when I was at physical therapy, the other while I was out back gardening. Both times. I remembered Rachel saying something vague, just a friend stopping by. No friend of mine. I called Felix. We met that night at a diner halfway between our towns. Over decaf coffee and scrambled eggs. We mapped it out. This was more than theft. This was a blueprint. Layer 1, my money. Already compromised. Layer 2, my medical authority. Falsified. Rerouted. Locked. Layer 3, my identity. Slipping away by the week. Even the timeline fit. Rachel had moved in exactly 9 months earlier. 2 months after that, she filed the first caregiver reimbursement through the estate account, $12,000, labeled as wellness services. 3 months later, she submitted a deed modification request. Said it was for tax purposes. I never signed it. A month after that, the Tesla lease. 36 months. Full coverage. No down payment. All approved using estate collateral. And now they were prepping the final moves. A petition for guardianship. Full medical control. Sale of the Florida condo. Liquidation of my municipal bonds valued at just under $1.1 million. Brandon had even contacted a yacht broker. He listed my boat as a pending estate transfer. Every breadcrumb connected. And in the middle of it all was Rachel. Organizing. Directing. Managing. With that same calm voice she used when she brought me tea and asked how I slept. What they didn't realize was, I had been listening, documenting, cross-referencing, and now I had what they didn't expect: a complete, time-stamped timeline, the forged power of attorney, the audio file from the Ring camera, the denied Medicare claim, the altered medical records, the notary who'd gone silent, the checks from the family foundation. It was all there. The light bulb moment wasn't dramatic. It came slowly, with every receipt I pulled, every email I reread, every detail I verified. I wasn't just the target of a scam. I was the final piece in their portfolio. Once I was declared incompetent, they could do whatever they wanted. Sell, transfer, spend, new questions asked. That's when I decided the next phase wouldn't be about confrontation. It would be about control. I didn't need to shout. I needed signatures. Legal ones. Witnessed. Certified. Because if they were playing the long game, then so was I. I didn't confront them. Not yet. When someone's building a lie this elaborate the worst thing you can do is tip your hand too early. So I smiled at breakfast. Nodded when Brandon mentioned something about crypto volatility. Let Rachel remind me to rest more, while she slid another letter onto the growing stack of mail she never let me open. Behind that smile, I was documenting everything. Every forged form. Every backdated check. Every unauthorized withdrawal. I wasn't guessing anymore, I was collecting. Felix helped me draft a formal cognitive report. Notarized and time-stamped. He included copies of our neurological exams, EEG readings, and memory tests. Every page spelled the same thing. Cognitive function normal. Diagnosis, no signs of impairment. Next, I called Mallory Grant. She wasn't just an elder law attorney. She was a fire breather in pearls. Former federal prosecutor. She specialized in fiduciary fraud and medical manipulation cases. And the moment she read through my documents, she leaned back in her chair and said one word: classic. Within 24 hours, Mallory filed an emergency injunction in Suffolk County Court. We had evidence. We had timestamps. And we had the law on our side. 72 hours later, the court issued a freeze. Effective immediately, all assets under the Rourke Family Trust were frozen pending investigation. That included the Florida condo, the Rhode Island yacht, my Fidelity accounts, and the estate's liquid reserves. Rachel had no idea it had happened until she tried to log into Chase. The access was denied. She texted me that afternoon, all smiles and emojis. "Hey Sam, weird bank login thing, want me to call support?" I replied, "Already handled." The next morning, she brought me coffee and acted like nothing had happened. I sipped it, said thank you, and returned to reading. She didn't know that Mallory had already filed paperwork to revoke the forged power of attorney, or that the notary, Daniel Wexler, had been subpoenaed and had admitted on record that he never actually witnessed me signing anything. And Brandon, he got served at his so-called startup office. A cease and desist order for unauthorized use of estate-held property. That included the Tesla he'd been driving and the podcast gear he bought with my foundation's funds. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't confronting. I was erasing them one signature at a time. Mallory brought in a forensic accountant. Her name was Sonia, and she was terrifyingly thorough. She built a 300-page report that traced every dime Rachel and Brandon had touched since the week they moved in. Total misuse, $312,000. Every wellness supplement, every maintenance invoice, every mileage reimbursement Rachel had snuck through the family trust they had receipts. Meanwhile, I made a few quiet moves of my own. I shifted my biotech stock worth over $3.5 million into a blind trust. Mallory made sure Rachel's name had been scrubbed from every access point. I transferred the yacht's ownership to a maritime nonprofit that provides therapy retreats for veterans. Brandon's pending sale collapsed overnight. I contacted the university board. I sat on and updated my official point of contact. Rachel's name was removed from all communication lists. Her email access was revoked, one by one. Every back door she had pried open, closed, and I didn't say a word, because this wasn't about drama. It was about discipline. They had built a castle out of assumptions. Assumed I was weak. Assumed I'd never notice. Assumed I didn't have the will to fight. What they didn't realize is I had spent 40 years making impossible decisions with people's lives on the line. I didn't panic. I planned. I let them build their case. Then I pulled the ground out from under them. Mallory filed the motion to remove Rachel as trustee. Felix submitted a sworn affidavit about the manipulation of medical records. The judge scheduled a hearing in under 2 weeks. Until then, everything remained frozen. Brandon packed a bag that night. Said he had to handle something in Denver. Rachel stayed. She paced the kitchen, watched me from the hallway. Her voice got softer, sweeter. She called me Dad again. And that's how I knew she still thought she could win. But the moment that court door opened, she'd learn the truth. Because this time, I wasn't the one under scrutiny. She was. And the evidence. It wasn't hearsay. It was printed, bound, and stamped with the seal of the very system she thought she could exploit. Court came faster than I expected. 2 weeks after we filed. I sat at the front of a quiet courtroom in Suffolk County. Oakpanelling. High windows. The kind of room that feels cold no matter the temperature. Rachel entered wearing a pale blue blouse and a forced smile. Her lawyer was younger than she was. Nervous already. shuffling papers like they might rearrange the truth. Brandon didn't show. No surprise. Mallory sat beside me, calm and razor-sharp. Felix was seated 2 rows behind us, his arms crossed. And Sonia, our forensic accountant, had her laptop open, color-coded tabs ready to detonate. The judge, a woman in her 60s with silver glasses and a voice like polished steel, opened with a single sentence. This case concerns elder financial abuse, power of attorney fraud, and unauthorized estate control. Let's proceed. Rachel's lawyer tried harm, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that I had agreed verbally to most of the decisions, that Rachel had only acted in my best interest during a time of visible mental decline. Mallory didn't flinch. She stood, handed the judge a binder, and said, "Exhibits A through F medical evaluation, audio recording, financial trail, falsified notary testimony, trust withdrawal logs, and the Medicare fraud letter." The judge took one look at the binder and said, "Proceed with reading into record." It took 23 minutes. Every forged check, every unauthorized transfer, every lie. Then Sonia stood and explained in precise, unemotional language how Rachel and Brandon had siphoned over $312,000 in less than 9 months. Vacation flights, lease payments, untraceable wellness purchases, a Tesla registered to the trust, a cryptocurrency account in Brandon's name. When Mallory played the ring recording, the one from the back porch, you could feel the air shift in the room. Rachel's voice played loud and clear. If we get him to miss one more neurology appointment, we finalize guardianship. Once that's through, we sell the Florida condo and cash the bonds. The judge paused the audio. "Is that your voice?" "Miss Morgan." Rachel didn't answer right away. Eventually, she nodded. Her tone shifted then. She leaned forward, spoke softly. "Your Honor, I was scared. I didn't want to lose the house. I didn't know what else to do." The judge didn't blink. "And your response to fear was to falsify documents, reassign medical authority, and attempt to liquidate over $4 million in assets belonging to a fully competent elder." Rachel's mouth opened, then closed. The courtroom stayed silent. I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. Done pretending she didn't know what she was doing. Done offering her the benefit of the doubt. Done being managed in my own home. The judge looked at me then. "Dr. Rourke, would you like to make a statement before we deliver judgment?" I stood slowly. My knees cracked. Just a little. I spent 40 years in operating rooms. I've seen tragedy. I've seen pressure break people. But I've never seen betrayal like this, not from someone I once called family. I looked straight at Rachel. "You didn't just try to steal money. You tried to erase who I was. You tried to write me out before I was even gone." I turned back to the judge. "I don't want revenge. I want protection for me. And for anyone who's ever been called paranoid just because they got old." The judge nodded. Her verdict came swiftly. Rachel was immediately removed as trustee. Her access to all financial accounts was terminated. A restraining order was issued minimum of 100 feet at all times, including online contact. Her assets were frozen pending repayment of the $312,000, plus penalties, and her sentence, 500 hours of court-ordered community service specifically, at an elder care facility. Mornings, nights, weekends, she tried to protest. But the gavel had already dropped. As for Brandon, a federal inquiry had been opened into the crypto account. The IRS was involved. His podcast vanished from every platform within days. The yacht remained docked. Now, under the care of the nonprofit, the Florida condo was restored to my full control. The Hamptons estate, though quiet, finally felt clean again. A week later, Rachel emailed. Subject line, "I'm sorry. I didn't open it. Some things don't need reading. Some stories end exactly where they belong. 6 months have passed since the verdict. I wake up most mornings in the Florida condo. Sunlight pouring through the window. Coffee in hand. Felix and I play chess on Sundays. Mallory calls to check in, always reminding me I'm stronger than I think. I still walk by Catherine's ceramic bird in the kitchen. It's a small thing, but it reminds me some bonds don't fade with time. Rachel never came back. Her apology sits unread in my inbox. And I let it stay there. Not out of anger. Out of choice. Now. I spend my days volunteering with a group that helps older adults protect their rights. I teach them what I learned the hard way. Boundaries outrank blood. If you were me, would you have pressed charges or just walked away? Let me know in the comments. And if you've ever rebuilt after betrayal, subscribe, because sometimes chosen family is stronger than the one you were born into.